Hi all, Shane here, Longland67, and welcome back to part 2 of our diorama based tutorial. So as you can see, we've let everything dry. Very lucky this time, very little cracking, actually none at all. That's rare, normally you get a small bit of cracking, but I believe by putting down, if you remember the last video, we finished by coating the entire model in PVA, a water PVA mix. So that actually must have acted as a binder and helped limit the contraction and retraction of the clay as it dried. So that's something that even I've learned. So you learn something new every day. So now we're going to begin base coating the model, or the base. And for that I'm going to use the airbrush. This case is a Herder and Steenbeck Evolution, and you have an airbrush, or alternatively you can just hand paint this. I'm going to use surface primer from Vallejo. Again, you could use any other paint like this. This is an artist acrylic brown, if you wanted to go straight and just paint the earth tones in, but for this I just prefer to give me another shade of black and work my way up from there. So this is going to be just a good shake straight from the bottle. My compressor is at actually that's a bit low, just about 20 psi, and I got my 0.4 needle in. So I switched out my needle. I normally use a 0.20 needle. This is my 0.4, and just pouring straight in. You don't have to mix or pin this again. Okay, pressure is a bit weird. I'm so used to the small needle that the amount of airflow through this would kind of catch me off guard. I just mount it onto an old cap so I can just move around my hand. So now I know this is not what this is designed for as such. This is for priming models, but like I said before, your diorama base is a model too. That's the mentality you have to have if you want to be a proper diorama. No, I don't mean to sound as pretentious like that, but I believe it's a good mentality to have if you consider yourself a diorama maker or builder. You have to consider your diorama base to be just as important as the model itself. So you give it all the same steps almost. Now I have my pressure up a bit high, but not to worry. As you can see, I'm kind of doing short bursts. I keep my airflow going and I'm not using it, so I need to get into the habit of doing that. This doesn't have to be too clean at all. You are going to kind of use up quite a bit of paint. If you have a cheaper alternative, or even just using you can easily brush paint this with black acrylic paint that you buy in your art shop if you wanted. It's one of the few times I recommend using artist grade cheap acrylics as on your bases. And some people, I think Chris and Alex from Chris and Alex Modelling have experimented with acrylics on their models. So maybe you should go over, check out their channel and see what tips and advice, because I don't use artist acrylics as in. Now they don't use this type of stuff. They use stuff that comes in a small bottle, but it's an artist acrylic, and I'm not sure how it works. So if you're curious about that, by all means go over to the two lads, and I'm pretty sure it's Chris and Alex, it was indeed who did it. So very talented model makers then too. So, but for base making, you don't need to use your expensive paints really for that, because it's not as finely detailed a surface. Now, as we can see, primes very quick. It's actually, because it's a bit of a humid day, it's drying already, which is great. It's exactly what we want. As you can see, because I have it mounted on this spray cap or spray can cap, I can move around the model, I can get under it. Also, by just mounting it on this piece of kitchen towel or tissue or kitchen paper, I can just rotate the model as I need to. So you're just trying to make it as easy for yourself as possible. So if you're doing this with a paintbrush, it would take you a little while. It could, and like I used to do it with a paintbrush up until I got the airbrush. It just takes a bit longer. It can be a little bit messier at times, depending. Just take your time. Keep your paint if you're doing it out, like if you're using this type of paint. Unless you, I tint this with a little bit of water. If not, what I recommend is if you want to use it as a piece of like straight out of the bottle, if you will, or out of the tube, and you want to make like a texture because this paint is quite thick. If you steeple it on, you can actually like make a bit of a mucky texture. So that's another little interesting thing. But in one of my other 72 scale builds that Andy from the models that Andy sent out to me, I'll be doing like a mud base, which would be kind of a first for me. I have a few pictures in mind that I want to recreate, and we'll kind of experiment with that at a later date. Okay, so everything is coated. Okay, now this should dry very quickly, so we're just going to pause for a few minutes, let this dry, and we'll continue. So I'll see you in a couple of seconds, lads, and we'll continue. So thanks for watching so far. I hope this is being handy, and it'll be a second for you, and it'll probably be about 30-40 minutes for me. So I'll see you in a few minutes, lads. Okay. Okay, and we're back. Right. So this is literally only sat for like 10 minutes. It dried that quick. So now I'm going to start working up on the earth tones. So I'm going to use 3 earth tones. You could use more if you wished, by just simply mixing and matching. There's another earth tone I wanted to use, I just can't seem to find it. If I find it, I'll throw it in. That's it here. Yeah. Basically, yeah, so the earth tones I'm going to be using, I like to work my way up. So it's going to be flat earth, or flat brown, flat earth, and then I'm going to mix some stone grey into it just to make it look a bit more hard baked and dried. And make it look like the fake has been sitting there for a while. So the flat earth's going to go on first. These are modelled colours. Again, out with the airbrush. This time we're going to have to thin down, so I'm going to use UMP's thinner. Give myself plenty of paint. You can even hear that I'm actually just backfilling my airbrush. That's how I like to mix my paints. I saw it in a Japanese model making show once. All these master model makers, they seem to look like to know what they were doing. So I'm gonna take a leaf out of their book. I think this might be a little bit too light. Oh, just right. Okay. So I like to work from the darkest colour up. Everyone's a bit different. So as you can see, I'm not being too precise where it goes. I'm letting black areas show through. I'm getting a bit of paint dried onto my needle, so I'm getting a bit of spatter. Now, I know most of you know this, but I'm just kind of talking it through. I'm trying to make a proper tutorial for once, but just doesn't include me talking shite for some time. I shouldn't be doing that, but yeah. Now I can hear the way this is feeding that it's giving me some problem. I actually think my paint might be a little bit too thick. Even though it's spraying pretty well, as in I'm getting pretty fine lines. So the hell with it. I'll get away with it on this. So bases don't need to be as prim and proper because you're modelling nature, and nature isn't neat. Now, I think again a little bit too light, I think, or a little bit too thin, so I can see how it's pooling in certain areas. Or maybe my pressure might be a little bit too high. go. My pressure was a bit low. I was wondering why she wasn't springing it differently. Okay, and we're back in business. So again, so you can see how quick work the airbrush makes of this process. Now we're beginning to look a bit like a base, and you can also kind of begin to see the definition in the slope as well, which is important. Okay, and that's pretty much, I'm happy with it. It doesn't look like much, but that will do. Now I can make a lighter transitional tone by mixing a bit of stone grey into it. I'm not going to do that quite just yet. I'm just going to clean out my airbrush. Okay. Don't be too surprised if this suddenly just ends a bit abruptly. My battery's going to die. I do have another battery ready to go, but I'm just going to keep working until this battery dies. So if you get a bit of a jump or a bit of a sudden stop with the conversation, don't worry about it. That's just most of you are kind of used to that in my videos anyway. So I'm just cleaning out my airbrush. I'm just using, when I'm changing colour and it's the same tone of colour, I just clean it out with a bit of water. These are water soluble, and then when I'm finished properly, then I take out my proper airbrush cleaners and give the model a proper clean, or give the airbrush a proper clean. That's just how I do it. Some people might have a heart attack at me doing that. I personally don't think it's the crime of the century. Now there's several things to note that I would say once this compressor shuts off. Today would be nice. Jesus, come on, you shut off, will you? I find if I bitch at my there we go. See, if you bitch at your compressor enough, it shuts off and you ask it to. Okay, so things of note. Because there's going to be a pond in this recessed area here, and a small bit of it here, this is going to be quite damp, and it's going to be kind of wet. It's going to be wet. So I'm going to leave the darker colour here and leave some of the darker colour on this area here, because this is pushed up earth. And then I'm going to begin to work back with the lighter tones. So the lighter tones are going to be here, down the edge, and then as we get closer to the foot of the slope, it's going to be darker. So not a big important note, but just something to keep in mind for yourself, you know what I mean? I crack myself up sometimes. Right, so now I'm going to apply. As you can see, I'm actually letting my coat completely dry. It's not completely necessary, because well, if they mix together, all the better, because it's going to give me a bit of a natural transition. So I'm going to apply some flat earth, again, Vallejo model colour. That squeaking is the fact that I'm cupping my fingers like that, and I'm getting a backflow of air. I'm using that to mix my paint. Some people say I might not want to do this, but as long as you just don't, as long as you're not putting any pressure on the needle. Okay. I'm starting to know maybe now the squeaking is, so I just want to take a brush and just mix the final parts. Okay, so you're going to see a bit of a large contrast in paint now. This is a substantially lighter tone. Often I find the easiest way when you're trying to figure out how do I step my colours is pick a corner, easily for the lightest colour. How I find when you're transitioning colours from dark to light for each successive light colour, and you're trying to figure out where am I going to begin, how am I going to place this colour. Well, actually, since it's lighter, it's going to be up on the more elevated surfaces of your diorama base. So start there and work your way down. In that case, then it gives you like a point to a point to work on. Okay, I'm already trying to get paint on my nib with my needle, which is annoying, but just the way it goes. And again, I'm trying to keep some of the darker colour to show through in some recessed areas. It's almost feel like pre-shading if you can kind of visualise it in that manner. Now again, if you don't like my style, which is fair enough, there are plenty of other model makers out there, like I mentioned a load of them in the last video. Actually just go into any of the model makers on your descriptions, and what I kind of wanted to say the last time was that we all have slightly different ways of doing things, so it's best that you try to go to see as many model makers. So say if you want to learn how to make dioramas, well, I know both Haneker and Cohn, they're very talented diorama makers. I also forgot Tristan Alex Modelling. He's making a fabulous I think it's finished now. A Crash P40. I built up a bit too bright there, but it's not going to really matter because the tank's going to be sat on that anyway. So like the point I'm trying to make is that give everybody's videos on diorama making a watch and take the elements like instead of just like emulating how I do it or how Michael does it or how such a person does it, more so use our videos as tools to make your own toolbox, if you get me, like in that case then like you create your own style, so like I mean that you don't have to worry about like oh, is my work too much like theirs, which is not going to be the case, you know what I mean. I'm always a big advocate of like making your hobby your own. Now you can see how I'm beginning to pull the airbrush a bit back from the base, and the reason for that is I'm trying to get very gentle oversprays because I'm just trying to blend everything in. But you can kind of see how the tones are changing. It does look a bit more orangey, almost looks like Vietnam ground through the camera as I'm looking at the viewfinder. But we're going to hit this with a couple of washes as well. Now again, I'm going to leave this area free of spray. There we go, and that's that colour. A little bit maybe here. Clean out, and then the last thing I'm going to do, so I'm actually going to, so this is the flat earth, I'm going to actually mix a bit of stone grey into it, so I don't want to go complete stone grey because it might be a bit too stark for this purpose. I'm going to put 2 or 3 drops in. Actually, just mix it normally. And and this gives me an automatic lighter tone. And it's a little bit too light for my purpose, so I'm going to actually add a little bit more flat earth into it. And this is going to be kind of to like the tops, because this is this vehicle would be knocked out early July when the last of 103's King Tigers got smashed out of it. I don't even know, like I don't know. I imagine it would have been because immediately after D-Day, I think it was on June 7th or June 8th, it started to rain, and it rained for like I think it was 4 or 5 days straight after it. So if you're doing it just directly after the landings, it's actually going to be quite wet. So I'm not, so like if it looks too dark, well then you can say, oh, this vehicle was knocked out just immediately after the landings. So it's good to have a few loopholes, so hang on. and this, you're going to see an immediate change in colour. And now I'm focusing on raised areas, similarly kind of ground that has been somewhat dried by the sun. So yeah, so that's pretty much what I'm going for. A bit too much there, but I will. So now you have multi-tones of ground. So it's going to give my airbrush a bit of a clean. Okay, it's very easy to overwork this, and I'm actually beginning to do this now. So I'm going to stop myself now because I'm going to overwork the piece. I'm just going to clean out my airbrush and put back on mine. Now, so again, you can kind of see how it looks a bit like crap, but when I start putting washes over it, and I'm going to be putting washes of this over it. If you remember I should have deleted that video, okay. Well, the vehicle itself is completed. I made a bit of a video of it, but I wasn't happy with it, so I didn't upload it. But I used these 3 AK products to weather my tank, my King Tiger. So these are fresh mud, dust effects, and earth effects. And I'm going to spray these into appropriate areas of the base to make sure that my model matches the environment in which it's set. And that's very important that you do that. So if you're building your models and they're not in tandem, so you're not kind of building a bit of the model and then building a bit of the base and a bit of the model and then you paint the model and you paint the base at the same time. If you're not doing that, which isn't, because it's not always practical to do that, and I don't do that, because I like to focus on one or the other. It's very important to keep track on the weathering process of your model so you make sure they match up. So I'm going to let this dry for a little while and then we're going to start adding this in. So I'll catch you back here in a few minutes, lads. Catch you in a few minutes. Tea break! And we're back. Sorry, I just had to get the airbrush a quick clean. It's kind of started to clog my airbrush a bit. So I've applied the darker colour to the areas where the mud and water effects will be, because it kind of makes sense to put it there. So I've applied it quite heavily. And now I've applied just earth effects, and that's going to be kind of applied generally over the area. And all these colours were used in weathering the actual tank. I'm trying to get some feed issues with this. But, sorry about that, my battery died. Everything's going wrong for this part of the video, but we press it there. So we shall. Okay, there we go. Back in business again. Okay. I'm gonna probably have to break the airbrush down in a minute. But the handy thing is you do get a bit of overspray or spatter. You can actually just with a brush mix it together. You can kind of see how it's changed the tone somewhat. As you can see, there's very little in the cup of my airbrush. I don't need all that much, and I'm just kind of randomly hitting it. And the whole idea is that when I sit the model on this, you'll actually see, you'll kind of see where, like, you'll see kind of similar tones in the weathering of the face. That's the word I was trying to find. Okay, and then finally, so I'm not really letting these dry in between, because if I let them wet, I can come back with a brush and wet blend them together if I have to. So now, say if I was too heavy in one area, I can come back in with a brush and just kind of pull in one direction and kind of. Doesn't work quite, but it's just good for for correcting mistakes. Now what I'm going to do is I can't even speak. From the way this is spraying, I know there's an obstruction in the airbrush, so I'm just going to pause for a moment and clear my airbrush, and I'll be back in a second. So hang tight. Hiya, back again. So the airbrush is cleaned out. The last element now is just going to add some dust. Very lightly. I'm going to go overboard here, and it's only going to be really up here. I'm staying away from here because it's kind of damp areas. What's I do with my little pipette? Yeah. Okay, got my pipette. I need to buy some more because it's fucking filthy. I need to get myself some more airbrush cleaner. I'm almost out. So I'll put an order in from UMP tomorrow, I'd say.
Obviously, now they want to bring in banning your mobile phone from your car, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
So just a small amount, it's only that much. It's actually probably too much. Okay. Ah, no! Fuck it. Ah! No, don't do it. Damn it, I'm stuck in airbrush. There we go. Alternatively, if I just hold it away from the bloody model, kind of balances out. There we go.
Where they just have the little earpiece. They look stupid. They look so stupid, and I always think person mentally is talking to themselves. And also they stare at you in the mirror and they're talking, and you think they're talking to you. They just look like they're just seriously. Yeah, I always wonder about those people who use them hand-free when they're walking down the street. Like, you can clearly use your hand. You look like a psychopath. You're talking to yourself. Just use the skin of your hands. That's too weird. Oh, what is it there? 535 double 4. I'll give you an example. Who's going to want to ban you in the mountains? That's 535 double 4. Tell us what you would like to ban. We're going to have to get for it. And most of you right.
send in text, and all you got to do is text us now. Or indeed, if you want to call the air, you can call us. The number is 1850 410 494. 1850
Okay,
410 494.
so here's the general look of it. So I'm going to let this dry, and I'll have to go back and add a little bit to it. I'm not too happy in how it came out, but we can change with a bit of flock here and there as well. Even though the original photograph doesn't seem to have much grass, I don't really like how this mud looks. It doesn't really look like mud, that's the problem. Okay, sorry about that. A lot of technical difficulties in this video, but you kind of get the idea. And a lot of things kind of went wrong, but I'm kind of happy with the result now. This white blob here is a piece of kitty litter that decided to disintegrate, but not to worry. And I'll probably come back and repaint some of these stones a little bit, just to add a bit of difference. I'm happy enough with it. I'm happy with this element here. That looks like proper mud. Maybe I might put a wash over this when I'm done, and I might not, we'll see. I'll just fit the model to the base there, which I'll do now. I don't know if you've seen this model since it's finished, but haha. So that's how she sits.
Oh, no, it's actually very embarrassing. My face goes purple. It's not even red. Don't feel right.
So, here we go. So, when all this dries, since this is an enamel, it's going to take a bit longer. I do a big clean on my airbrush. But, so nearly there. It looks pretty close to the photograph, which is the thumbnail for this. So nearly there now. Just a couple more hours work. The big part of this is going to be actually the still water. That cannot be rushed. If that is rushed, then disaster will loom. So we're going to need to take our time on that. So so again, what I did was I just used the same colour enamel that were used weathering the tank. Built up some layers. So like when it sits on the tank, when the tank sits on, you can kind of see the shades that are weathered onto the vehicle or on the ground. So you can get an idea this is the area where it's been operating in, or it just stands out like a sore thumb and doesn't make any sense. What I'm probably going to go and do next is just paint out the stones, some of them at least. I need to touch that one up. If it's too stark, I might come back with a very light wash. Might not. So yeah, we're nearly there now. Nearly there. So thank you for watching. I'm sorry this video's been a bit on and off. It's just a few bits and pieces went wrong. But just sometimes the nature of it all. So thanks for watching, lads. Please comment, rate and subscribe. If you have any questions, please ask. I'll be happy to help you in any way I can, as you know by now. And I also have a very cool build lined up after this one. So thanks for watching again. Stay safe, happy modelling, and watch out for those buses. Cheers, bye.